Are the funds withheld hurting South Africa or no?
Yes, it is. It's not hurting South Africa, it's hurting the whole continent. And part of that is, because, Western hegemony and Western imperialism, never moves people, towards, liberation. That's not the goal. The goal is to move people to dependence. In fact, in many, many ways, it's not even interdependence, and that's why, I love, God rest his soul, Ron Brown, right? When he was Commerce Secretary and he tragically, died in a plane crash, his slogan that he used was trade, not aid. Because for him, it was restoring the dignity, right? And the sovereignty, of those that we will connect with on the continent, to be able, to invite them into an equal partnership, into a relationship that affirms both sovereignty and dignity, right? But Western imperialism, does not work, like that. It's about how do we continue extraction by way of dispossession, disempowerment, and dependence. So USAID, though it has done a lot of good work, right? As you can see now, it has resulted in dependency. That's why, the current administration is using it, you see, as leverage to negotiate by saying, if you don't do this, we're going to take this and that away. So yes, it's, it's hurting. Yes, it's detrimental. I was in South Africa, in January, with one of my, immersive experience, teams, from the United States, right? And so we saw, live, once that executive order was signed, one of our drivers, brothers, that came to pick us up that morning, right, said his wife went to work this morning, right, for an agency that received USAID, and she was told, you need to go home because that funding was cut, and we need you to take an unpaid, sabbatical for 90 days until we figure out what this, what this will do. And he said to us, I'm so glad I have you all here to be able to do business with, because that's what's probably going to have to carry us through during these uncertain times until we see, things happening. So yes, it's hurting. Yes, it's painful. It has caused a lot of, layoffs, put a lot of families, at risk. But that's what dependency do. I think the opportunity in this crisis is for us to have more creative and courageous leaders to see how we can move, towards self-reliance, towards interdependence, towards self-sufficiency, you see, and see, how we can, step up to engage in trade and not just depend on aid.
Mm-hmm. I would say one of the big impacts of that, though, is in the area of public health. We do see in that area where African locals and ministries of health within African governments are very responsive and very quick, but they need genuine partnership in order to bring those impacts to scale. We have the CDC, the Center for Disease Control. We have, not just USAID, but all these other things that we're doing. We have PEPFAR, the President's Emergency Plan for AIDS Relief, which made HIV no longer a death sentence on the continent. These were all done through the work of USAID and the United States government that went in and provided that, doing all types of health screenings and supporting all sorts of other responses to epidemics and pandemics throughout, and helping to alleviate a lot of diseases like guinea worm and others in Western Africa. This is the legacy of U.S. involvement in terms of global public health. And now we're out of WHO. We're not supporting the World Food Program. I can tell you that food security is a major issue on the continent. And we're not providing, support for World Food Program or for our Foreign Agricultural Organization, the FAO, and all these other things to help supply food security throughout the continent, we at risk of having another famine like we did back in the 1980s in Ethiopia. And what were we doing before that? You said trade, not aid. One of the things the U.S. was involved in is a program called Feed the Future, and which is all about helping local African small-scale farmers, most of them women, to be able to produce food and have food security within their own borders, so they don't rely on imported foodstuffs coming from the United States or from other people in terms of aid, but being able to grow their own food, making sure they have the inputs and the tools and the mechanization and the training that's necessary for them to do that. And these were the types of activities that were happening. And USAID money passes through, 60% of the funds pass through faith-based organizations based in the United States. Most of the money that's spent in foreign aid, most of that money comes back to the United States, because we say you have to buy our products, you have to buy our equipment, you have to use our NGOs. And so all that money supports salaries and institutions back in the United States. It's not money that's given away to foreign governments at all. So that's where the people really need to, again, have that education. We know that foreign aid budget is less than 1% of the budget. And so, but in people's minds, they think it all goes to military and to foreign aid. And that's a perception that people who are opposed to the U.S. having this role in the world continue to foment. But yeah, it's going to have a tremendous impact. Withdrawing from the world through our institution, particularly in the healthcare area, could be very challenging. Because I can tell you, I recall my former boss and your mentor, Bishop Blake, back in the early 2000s, took on this issue about what was happening in South Africa during the AIDS pandemic, and met with President-elect George Bush about how important it is would it be for the United States to play an active role. And I wasn't there, but I heard from a firsthand account that George Bush turned to Bishop Blake and said, "Don't worry, I'm going to do Africa." And when he said, "I'm going to do Africa," that meant he created PEPFAR, which helped reduce the AIDS deaths more than half. Now, you have more HIV drugs available, more ACT testing and community outreach and all of these things that, help to reduce the spread of HIV and also help people with HIV be able to live productive lives without dying from AIDS. That is all gone now because they cut PEPFAR.
Yeah, because
I heard where Dr. Arikana